Ichigo awakens back to Lodge. Chapter 9, The Archer Returns. The Archer returns. Sometime later, after the events at the abandoned hospital, the show Ghostbuster made some changes to the methods made in sending the spirits to the afterlife. The very same changes and the statements he made had turned Don Kanonji into the number one TV star in the entire nation, and he never forgot the lessons Ichigo had taught him. Tatsuki and Orihime demanded a redo on that date Ichigo had agreed on as well, and went to the arcade. Tatsuki, feeling bold, imposed the challenge that whoever won in the games they played gets a kiss from the person of their choice. Ichigo never won once, whether by choice or being bad at the games. He left his girls feeling very giddy. Things did get brighter for him after winning them a tiger and a lion plushie as a group of punks tried to pick up his dates. His home clinic got a few more customers after that. The following hours were coming fast, and Ichigo, being the gentleman he was, escorted his ladies to their homes. And thanks for this, Ichigo. Orihime cheered, holding her stuffed lion Ichigo won for her as he and Tatsuki told her good night in front of her apartment. No problem, he said, less enthusiastically. I'm sure my reputation can recover after this. I just hope you had a good time. She responded by leaning in next to him and planting a swift kiss on his cheek. I really did. She smiled at him before walking towards her brother, who was smiling at Ichigo and shooting him a thumbs up. As long as it made Orihime happy, then so was he. He knew Ichigo and Tatsuki personally and had faith in the two. Ichigo quickly responded, still a little unsure about his feelings in all this. He was supposed to prepare for a coming war, and polygamy was kind of frowned on in the present day. The cheers from Zangetsu Urahara and his father didn't help matters in the slightest. Now how about the brave protector escorts their date home? Tatsuki teased, latching onto Ichigo's free arm and grinning the whole time. Am I protecting you or the other way around? He joked as they proceeded to head for Tatsuki's home. They spent the time in silence, reflecting on the day and their activities. He liked Orihime because she was so upbeat and happy. She made him happy because her attitude was so infectious. Tatsuki just understood Ichigo on that guy level. She was actually while Orihime was passive, a good contrast and would probably work wonders if he needed a shoulder to lean on or a much needed kick in his ass. He may not like the idea of being a player, but he also knew they weren't giving him the option either. Ichigo, Tatsuki asked after walking for a while, why didn't you tell me before? She felt hurt. Ichigo used to talk to her about everything, but she had to find out about him being a soul reaper, about him preparing for a war since he was a child. How could he not talk to her about that? Wasn't she his sparring partner with Chad? Wasn't she his childhood friend? Did all that mean nothing? This doesn't concern you, Tatsuki, he said solemnly. You're a normal girl. You should worry about normal things. I do, she countered. I worry about my friends and want to help. She glared at him as he avoided looking at her. Does Chad know? Ichigo remained silent for a bit. Yes. She pushed him away and slapped him. What makes him so special? She was developing tears. He gets to know the big secret, but I can't. Ichigo wasn't looking at her. He didn't want to hurt his oldest friend. What about that study partner of yours? Does Uryu know? His silence was all the answer she needed. Why? Because you're powerless, she said to her. Chad can shoot blasts of reishi like a cannon. Uryu is from a long line of people that specialize in fighting hollows. He grabbed her by the shoulders and looked deep into her eyes. You have been learning the same martial arts that I have, but you're not fast enough to keep yourself safe, strong enough to overpower those opponents, and most importantly, he held her to his chest tightly. I would never forgive myself if something happened to you. Tatsuki just stood there, trapped in his arms, feeling his worry. She relaxed after a bit. It's not fair. She wrapped her arms around him in a more comforting manner. When did I become the one that needed protecting? They stayed like that for close to an hour before finally separating. They parted ways after that. Tatsuki to her home, Ichigo to just wander about. He felt terribly telling Tatsuki she was powerless, that she couldn't help him, but he also knew it was true in his other life. She was more of a liability, and charging into fights she would not be able to win. That really was mean of you to say. He heard a soft meow coming from his female mentor, in human form for now. She does want to help you. She's not like Chad or Odium or even my sisters. He responded a little bit despondent after the talk with his oldest friend. She doesn't have any powers, or if she does, then they would have manifested by now, he said as he began his trek to his home, back to an overly curious father and sister, while the other one retains a semblance of respect for privacy, a dutiful Shinigami that'll invade his privacy at the slightest hint of a hollow and his empty bed. Don't be so sure, Ichigo. Yuriichi thought as Ichigo left. When a girl is determined, they're going to achieve their goals. As Tatsuki is not as powerless as you think, she grinned to herself, remembering the events of her last spar with her fiery disciple. How there was fire in her strikes. There are certainly more surprises for us down the road. She was thinking this while keeping her focus on her students, but I will have that ass, Ichigo. Oh yes, I will. Soon Ichigo faded into the distance, and she herself made her way back to the shop. Midday in an alley. It was the third day that week. He had exams. He tried to study. Rukia gets a call. They roll out. Then nothing. The hollow. No soul reaper. Just a lone soul. Now things were getting fishy. It was an unspoken rule between the cousins that they study by themselves during exam week in order to create a sense of competition in order to push the other. He never beat Uryu in the top spot once. This time was no different. Aside from the constant interruptions because he doesn't want to get Rukia dying, the guilt of Rukia dying because she still hasn't recovered enough of her powers. Now here they were on another wild goose chase with no hollow to fight and a pathetically annoying soul. Once that was strange, twice was a coincidence, third time's a pattern. While Rukia was fiddling with her receiver, Ichigo went to get answers. His first clue was briefly traced in the area that felt vaguely familiar. Hey, spirit! He yelled at the overweight, doe-sized, middle-aged spirit of a man missing a chunk of his side. What happened here? What did you see? He demanded roughly. He was squeaking out, still terrified from the near second death experience before crying out, Thank you! He leapt towards Ichigo with tears streaming down his face. I was so scared I almost peed myself. His cries were met with a crushing stomp on the back of his head as Ichigo tried to emphasize his irritation. What did you see? He punctuated with grins on the with grins on the fat smuck's head. I was so scared. I had my eyes shut the whole time. He whimpered out after Rukia pulled Ichigo off of him. After he said that, Rukia wanted to stomp the miserable soul from existence. Ichigo had another question for his theory. If he was right, then he might have some choice words with a certain relative. Did you hear anything? He surprised both Spirit and Rukia by the oddity of the question. Anything like a whistling sound? Rukia looked at the teen in confusion while the spirit actually seemed to remember something. Yeah, the spirit said tentatively. Yeah, there was a whistle. After that, the monster disappeared. There were only so many people in Kurikara that could fit the description, and a quick glance to a building roof gave him all the answers he needed. Ichigo, Rukia asked her scowling teammate, what is it? Ichigo's response was to swiftly perform the konzo on the unsuspecting soul before heading home. Nothing important. I have to study for exams, so leave me alone. He growled, trying to make it seem like he was more in a bad mood because of the waste of time and not anything else. After what happened to Soken, he wasn't too trusting of Soul Reapers when it came to his other side. After exams week, finally! Keigo cried out as he slumped over his desk. A long week of tests and exams finally over. I'm dead. You certainly look like it. Mizurio quipped, looking just as terrible himself. These exams are important if you want to get anywhere in life after high school, Ichigo told them, darkly remembering Rukian lecturing the boys after one mishap on a test. He vowed to never relive that nightmare. That's easy for you to say. Keigo whined with comical tears running down his face while pointing at him accusingly. You study all the time, you nerd. He wasn't exactly wrong. He does study a lot, and that was his excuse when he's needed to make a getaway from Keiko when he trains his powers. Why don't you help me study, buddy? He cried out, flinging himself at Ichigo, who punched him in the face. Study on your own, you idiots! He growled out. High school was especially rough on him. People picked fights with him. Most of his teachers stigmatized him. Even with good grades, they just seemed to hate him. The only reason it's known that he's that he's that he's that he that it's known that he does good in school is because his teacher Oriichi Sensei doesn't discriminate and congratulates him on his schoolwork in front of everyone as she did with everyone. It did help his image a little, but some teachers still hated his reputation and attitude. Now where is he? He asked himself as he entered the hall. All the students in his grade gathered around a bulletin to see their ranking. Third in the class. Good job, Urihime, he heard Tatsuki say, patting her friend on the head and making her giggle. Tatsuki saw Ichigo coming up before turning away, either in anger or shame, he did not know. Urihime turned to see their mutual crush before patting angrily at him, and she took Tatsuki by the arm and walked away, surprising everyone. I don't think I've ever seen Orihime angry before. The common students began gossiping about what could possibly have upset the normally bubbly girl they all knew and loved. Ichigo felt terrible, all those feelings from that night rushing back at him in full force. So far, no one was blaming him, so the knowledge of them dating probably didn't get out. Or Chad did something to quell the talks. At the moment, and not his problem, he took the time to look at the class ranking, where he was fifth in the grade. Rukian made the requirement for the cousins to be in the top 10 if they wanted their Quincy training. It was a good motivator. He glared at the one name in particular before finally sensing him. He gave a quick glance at Chad, who seemed to understand what he wanted, before slinking off to meet the Quincy. On the rooftop, damn it! The bespectacled teen cursed. It wasn't his grades he was angry about, nor any misshapes in his sewing. The object of his ire were the two small crosses in his hand, one silver while the other was black, but both had a skull insignia. These were the new Quincy crosses created by Urahara to exorcise the hollows instead of destroying the souls outright. With them he could do as the Quincy and as his grandfather wanted. There was just one problem. I know he said it would require more fine control, but this is ridiculous. The new bows took his own reiatsu as well as the ambient ratio around them to work. He was not used to the method and was training it as much as he could. Why was he angry? Uryu! He forgot to tell his cousin, and he dropped a few places he himself was in second place for the grade. Something you forgot to tell me, cousin? Ichigo growled at his dark-haired relative, neither dropping their glare at the other. Unfortunately, yes, he said before tossing his cousin the black cross. Urahara finally finished my gear, and I had to test mine out. Ichigo caught the cross with ease before examining it for himself. It needs you to draw on your own Ryutsu and the surrounding reishi to function. Pushing and pulling as he said, Ichigo slipped his new cross on his wrist before focusing. He managed to get a cloud of Reiatsu perpendicular to his hand before letting it dissipate. Yikes! Ichigo panted as the effort pushed him mentally. That is rough. This was going to require remastering Quincy arts all over again. So you have the ability. Why didn't you reveal yourself to Rukia? Would you readjust his glasses, having the light mask his eyes? That's because there was a pause between the two. I couldn't think of a cool entrance, he said dramatically, trying to make it sound more impressive than it was. Ichigo's response was to give his cousin a violent nugget. My rank dropped 3 places because of the Shinigami crap, he growled while Uryu tried to escape his torture. I didn't need these pointless chases if there wasn't a hollow. I'm sorry. He tried to plead for forgiveness. He was still grateful for his cousin. If it wasn't for him, he'd probably be an ostracized loner. Ichigo stopped when they sensed another hollow. Let me, Uryu suggested after Ichigo let him go. Is Kuchiki-san going to be a problem here? He asked, walking to an opening in the fence as a hollow appeared in the distance. Chia should be keeping her busy. Ichigo answered as Uryu summoned his new spirit bow. It had a black body with a bright blue aura. Should be fine then, Uryu said as he took aim. It was a millipede-like hollow searching around for a meal. He shot a flying black arrow straight through the neck of the monster and making it disintegrate, particles flying into the air as it faded. Kitsuki did a fine job with that, Ichigo said, more impressed with Kitsuki than his cousin for a skill he already had. Yeah, but I can't make a solid bow anymore, Uryu informed as he shook his hand. It's going to take forever to get to that level again. You can worry about that after meeting Rukia, Ichigo said, getting ready to leave. Tonight, just appear out of the shadows or something. He left his cousin alone. Tonight, huh? He said, Thinking back on their cover story, it wasn't exactly wrong, but he also didn't want to lie about his family connection either. Later that night, in some random street, again, Rukia growled as they ended up in another order, but no hollow to show for it again. Is this thing busted? She looked at her soul pager in anger, trying to figure it out. Ichigo remained silent as he dragged his body out and went back inside, patiently waiting for the Quincy to arrive. And why are you so quiet about this? She yelled at her partner accusingly. You were so mad earlier, so why are you silent now? Impatient, isn't she? Ryu stated, coming out of the shadows finally. He wore a form-fitting white uniform that seemed like a mix between a Chinese origin and Catholic robes. How unprofessional of a Soul Reaper. He stopped before the two. Good evening, Ichigo. Kuchiki-san. Rukia was about to ask before Ichigo spoke first. Uryu Ishida, speaking coldly to his cousin, trying to match his tone. They both sensed another hollow, and Uryu quickly dispatched it while Rukia responded to her pager. Just as quickly as it appeared, it was dead. Rukia was watching the Quincy in shock, wondering what new development this was. You see, Kuchiki-san, I am. He was about to tell her before Ichigo got behind him and pulled his outer robe over his head and tied it shut, trapping both the Quincy's arms. His name's Uryu Ishida, Ichigo told Rukia while his cousin struggled to free himself. Like Chad, he's also an empowered human. He's a Quincy. Uryu finally freed himself of his confinements and glared at the hybrid. I thought you said I could make an entrance, he glowered through his teeth. And you did, Ichigo affirmed. I never said I wouldn't ruin it. Payback for not telling me earlier. Why weren't you paying attention? I had tests to study for. The two bickered while Rukia was looking completely lost. Excuse me, she yelled before the two teens could start exchanging blows. Can I get an explanation? Sure, Ichigo said. We met when we were kids. We trained together for years, Uryu continued. We promised to fight together. We've been close ever since. Aside from the occasional slip-ups, they finished together before attempting to return to the childish squabble. Rukia still had questions. But what's a Quincy? She asked the boy. What do we look like? Ichigo scoffed. Your personal encyclopedia. Would you say it condescendingly? Ichigo then began talking about the irrationals he's dealt with since Rukia showed up in his life, making his cousin sympathize. Shortly after that, Uryu and Riken were invited to dinner after Yusu called Ichigo asking if he was going to have dinner. The rest of the day passed by without Rukia getting any answers from the two, leaving her one choice. The next day at Urahara's shop, the Quincy and the Ishidas, huh? The Tessai was setting out the tea for the three of them as Rukia tried to get information. Ichigo isn't telling you? Urahara teased the noble. Yes, she responded, taking a sip of her tea. He said he'd be my partner, but he wouldn't say anything about them other than he and Ishida were friends. Not surprising. The Shinigami let Uryu's grandfather die years ago, he said, surprising Rukia. The Quincy were a clan of spiritually aware humans who specialize in destroying hollows, complete destruction, not cleansing them at all. Rukia paid rapt attention to the former captain as he explained a lost history most did not know. The Shinigami tried to convince them to leave the business of hollows to them, but the Quincy refused, and they had to be all but wiped out. The Quincy threatened the balance of the souls that the Soul Reapers worked to maintain, and they did this massacre as a last resort about 200 years ago. The survivors tried to live in peace while some still advocate an alliance of sorts. Soken Ishida was the last Quincy elder to support that idea. Through Uryu and Ichigo, however, that dream could possibly become reality. He told his favorite customer about the new Quincy device he augmented to allow the Quincy to act as true allies to the Shinigami instead of a danger to the whole world. Ichigo was probably protecting his friend, waiting for you to see him in a better light. Rukia had to question what she knew about Soul Society again, if such things had happened. A kind, innocent man who wanted nothing more than to help, left to die because of the inactions of the Soul Reapers, refusing alliances because of a grudge they tried to end. What was going on in her life? This is all so strange, she whispered, shaking from all the weariness. You're a new Soul Reaper, just out of the academy. Urakata told the petite girl, This is heavy, classified stuff. Just then, Rukia's pager went off. She picked it up and was frozen in terror. What is this? Guadalajara Hospital rooftop. Your dad was surprisingly lax about the test scores, Ichigo said to his cousin as they studied and practiced their archery skills. Uryu was shooting the target's bullseyes, while Ichigo was going over notes. They would switch after emptying the quiver. As long as we're in the top 10, he's fine with us, Uryu said before shooting his intended targets flawlessly again. Just as Uryu prepared to make another shot, Ichigo felt something strange in the air. Barely a tenth of a second later, they sensed a swarm of hollows appear in the city, hundreds of them. Uryu, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Despite my best wishes, I unfortunately am. The air was soon filled with hundreds of ghostly roars, crying out in hunger. End of chapter 9.